Hi everyone, good evening. We'll just wait for a few more people to join up. Lovely to see so many of you. Actually, one quick house rule. Actually, if upon kind of entering, just put yourselves on mute. That would be amazing, because otherwise we can hear the background noise. So when Chris and Steven are talking, we'll just hear everyone's noise. So if you could just put yourselves on mute, that would be amazing. I'm just going to admit a couple more people, and then we'll get going. Well, welcome again to everyone in our next instalment of kind of Behind the White Lines. Incredibly proud to be joined this evening by Chris Ramsey, who is the QPR technical director. He was telling Steven and I kind of just before he's not new to football. Been in it since he was kind of 16. That's kind of it's at least 20 years and maybe edging over just 40 years. But look, this is a brilliant opportunity for us at Behind the White Lines. What we're trying to do is create an incredible community to give you access to coaches, to players, to learn about everything that could give you an opportunity, I guess, as it kind of says, to make it pro.
How did you get?
Get your questions in. Either raise your hand and I will try to get to you.
It's 50 altogether. It's not 50 and 50, otherwise we'll make 100.
Could we just put everyone on mute, please? Because we can hear you if you are in. So get your questions in. We will do our very best to get around to absolutely everyone. And apologies if we don't, of course. So you will see it as well, but we are recording this. And the reason that we're recording it is that not everyone can join. So please do, if you're not comfortable with it, then either put yourselves, turn your screens off, or watch it on catch up. So I'm actually going to kind of hand you over now, and obviously follow Behind the White Lines on LinkedIn as well and across social media, and you'll be able to kind of follow on the next webinars that we're going to have. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to kind of Steven to get the first initial kind of questions out of the way and do more of an intro to Chris. So Steven, mate, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for the introduction. Evening, everyone. Really nice to see a lot of faces on here again. So today we are joined with Chris Ramsey. He is a very close friend of mine, actually, someone who helped me come through the ranks at Tottenham at the age of 15. And I've sort of stayed in touch with him ever since, worked together at QPR as well. Chris has been an ex-player and a coach. I'll let him tell you, or you can ask him actually as the sort of meeting goes on, various questions about his career. He's been responsible for bringing a lot of good players through the ranks, and I'm grateful for him giving me my opportunity. So on that note, Chris, I will start with the first question, and then if people wanted to raise their hands, then we can sort of pick you out to ask your next question. First question I want to ask you. So you made your debut in 1981, right? That's 42 years ago. Sorry to highlight your age right now. 42 years ago. Like, what's been the biggest change for you?
Listen, people talk about things changing all the time. As you can see, what I've got behind me, you know, the ball's still round and the grass is still green. If you're a coach, you're still going to coach width and height in attacking and denying space in defending. So I think the basic principles of the games has changed. What's does not changed. I think what it is, it's the gloss. So if you look at the balls behind me, my first World Cup that I saw was in 1970. It was Italy versus Brazil. Pele scored in that game, and all those balls represent the different World Cups. But the principles of the games have stayed the same. Now, obviously, we know social media has changed a lot. Obviously, Sky has changed a lot as regards the money, and as the stardom that players have got now is completely different to when I first started. But that's the main thing is the gloss. People think there was no tactics back in the day. There was.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. And I mean, I wasn't around to see the 1970s World Cup and stuff like that, but obviously I've played for 15 years now, so I've certainly been around long enough to see even that period of time a change. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of social media come into play, and a lot of things, you know, That's it. Like you used the word gloss. I definitely sort of see that in football today. I'll be greedy and ask you just for one more question. You've been, as I said, working with the likes of Harry Kane, Abiri Eze, God, I could go on a long list. Andros Townsend, who we had on here last month. I think 20, 30 odd players who've gone on to play in the Premier League. What is it that you see in a youngster? What is it that you saw in me, as an example, when I came in as a 15? What is it that you look for in these young players?
The main thing is regardless, as say we talk about Andros, Andros, I've probably sent him in every year I worked with him because of his nature and his combative nature. But he still wanted to learn. He showed a respect.
Sorry, can we mute everyone, please, Paul?
You just need to unmute yourselves. There you go. And then just
Rambo, you unmute yourself.
There you go.
Sorry. So yeah, what was your answer? Sorry.
So Andrew, the players, all the players, the ones I look for are the people that actually want to learn and actually don't want to learn by giving lip service. They learn by their actions. So whether they agree or disagree, at some stage they trust that you have their best interests at heart and that you have a way of dealing with them as an individual, and how your relationship is with them is what's going to help them get over the hurdle. So I always look for the players that actually want to learn. I don't look for the players that I think that are supremely skillful or anything like that. I just look at the first of all, do they want to learn? Do they want to put into action what we've agreed is going to get them to the next level?
Chris, one question that I kind of had while we're waiting for kind of people to kind of raise their hands is, you mentioned about social media has kind of got much more of a kind of a presence and stuff like that. From you kind of joining football kind of in 1981 and 1982, how much of an impact is that having on academy players? And how aware are the clubs now of the social media presence of the academy players?
Yeah, I think the social media has put immense pressure on academy players. I think it's taken up another notch, because first and foremost, people now are footballers at under 9. That's what they are. They're identified as footballers as under 9. They go to school. Everybody knows them as little Johnny who plays for Arsenal or Tottenham or West Ham, and that gives them a sense of belonging, a sense of pride, sense of being special. And the more they stay in the clubs, in the academies, the more they become attached to that level of being special, and they get the followers and people are talking about their games. So I think for young players, it is really, really difficult now to get away from that. They're sort of embedded in how they grow up.
That's something that you would have enjoyed, or something that you would have really not enjoyed?
I'm not really. I think when you're young, you grow up with it, so it becomes normal. It would be a normal thing. I don't think it would have done me any good, because I'm quite an addictive personality. So, you would probably be getting in with the wrong people, or not the wrong people as regards criminal acts, but in regards how you would live your life and stuff like that. So I don't particularly think, for me personally, it would have been a good thing. However, I know that for the young players, they don't know any different.
Very true. Marcus has put a question into chat, actually, Chris. So he would love to know what advice you would give to a youngster looking to start their coaching career.
The coaching career, it depends how old they are, and I would say, if you want to coach, do not be looking at Pep and Arteta and people like that, because they are the university lecturers and you need to be the primary school teacher. So most of the times all I hear people are talking about is, we played with a low block and a high block and this, that and the other. They're not actually teaching the young players. So give you an example, here we lost 4 coaches at the beginning of the year who all came in and said they were specialists working with the under 9s. And by the time the end of the season come, they all want to work with the under 18s. So I would say anyone coming into the game, learn your trade first and foremost. Realise that if you're not involved with the first team, that you're a developer and you're actually a teacher of these young players, rather than trying to make teams that win games. And it depends where you want to coach. If like Steven alluded to, at Tottenham, we had a lot of players that went through the system. But myself, John McDermott, and Alex Inglethorpe and Perry Suckling, we basically looked at the individual. So winning the games in the youth was important because we liked it. However, if we hadn't won all the games hadn't won a lot of the games and still got the players to get to the level that they did, that's more important. So that's what I would say to anyone starting their coaching career.
That's a really, really good point. I'm going to follow on with that, actually, because a lot about being a youngster is about confidence, right? So the more you win, the more confident you get. But actually, you're telling, well, actually, winning's nice, but actually it's about the developing of the players. So then that comes that coaching and that man management or that people management. Say it's not all about the winning, actually, it's about how you're developing each time, right?
Yeah, and it depends what you consider winning to be. So I'm consumed with players making it. So winning for me is if I see another player in the team. So depends what winning is for you and what winning is for your club's philosophy. So this year we've had another player we've had 22 debuts since I've been here. So we had another player play this year. So to me, I don't care how many youth team games we win this year now, because he's played in the team. So it depends what you consider winning to be. And if winning is that you are the best under 16s coach and you've won every game, but most of your players are now not in the game in 3 years' time, then you've really coached for yourself.
That's such an incredible point for any aspiring coach out there. Sagan, I'm going to come over to you. So if you just unmute yourself, you can then ask either Stephen or Chris a question.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to know how you deal with sentiments and emotions from parents when their kids are playing football and they're under your tutelage. How do you navigate those sort of circumstances?
Right, there's two things. One, when I worked in football in the community, there was a different way of dealing with the parents because the outcome was fun and enjoying it. When you're dealing at an academy, they're coming, there's actually an audition every year to become a professional footballer for a job. So it's important that now we do workshops on managing expectations where the players are not involved. It's about us making sure that the parents realise that the dream is the players, not theirs. And it's also important that the parents realise about the statistics, 0.012% out of 1.5 million. So that's like at 10 Wembleys only getting 180 people coming out of there. So it's important that the parents realise that this is a journey and an experience that they need to enjoy. The players need to enjoy the experience, whether they make it or not. So we keep on hammering home that message about education, about the players enjoying it, about the players not being identified as a footballer from 9 years old. And that's really all we can do, to be honest.
Yeah, really. Well, hopefully, Sagan, that's kind of answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next one's coming in from Murray Lindley. So concerning the pressures and difficulties for young players, how would you say the mental health landscape has changed within the game in your own experience?
I think the mental health landscape has changed as regards, so for argument's sake, my mum died when I was 22, but there was no putting your arm around you from that point of view. Now, I had a good manager who actually did do that. Lou Macari did. But there was no counselling. It's something that I believe that different types of counselling should come into the game. For instance, bereavement, people that are dealing with things outside home, siblings with autism or disabilities and stuff like that, to understand where people are coming from. I think the landscape has changed. I'm not sure if it's changed totally in the correct direction. I think we're still experimenting with different types of doctoring as regards mental health. But I think that if I look at myself, I had 15 operations when I played. and I was injured for long periods. And I look at how I was dealt with, and it's completely different now to when I was a player, trying to overcome the rigors and the depression cycle of an injury. So I think people are now starting to understand more and more that is important, especially when you've got commodities that, I'm calling people commodities because they are really for footballers, that cost 20, 30 million. You know, why you would service your Bentley, wouldn't you? You would service it that way. So why wouldn't you service a person that, if you want to be crude, is worth 20, 30 million to a club? However, it's not only those people that should be serviced. You know, you also got your other people from the people in the academy all the way through. So, I mean, here we've tried to implement some psychological support for the players. Now, I'm not saying that we've got it right or wrong. I don't know. I still think all those things are in their infancy at the moment.
Actually, just following on from that, then I guess it ties in nicely with kind of what Behind the White Lines kind of ultimately kind of trying to achieve, which is supporting kind of players that might have been released from kind of academies. Do you think that enough is done to support players that have kind of dedicated time that maybe don't quite make it to then support their mental health on an ongoing basis?
I think I see Trent Alexander-Arnold has put something lately, and there's a few other initiatives that have come out where people are trying to help. I think it's important to support players, but it depends how long you support them for. Because if you're still, I've got players that are still ringing me up at 26, going on trials at step 6, you know, and at some stage, that's because we've identified them too early as footballers. Their whole identity in their life is that they're a footballer. So they don't get on with their lives. So it's important that I don't think that is that when you support players, you're only supporting them to be footballers somewhere else. Because as we know, there are only 4,000 to 5,000 footballers in service at any time. And if you think how many million people want to be players, the numbers don't fit. So a lot of times people say, well, what are clubs doing? You know, there's so many people don't make it, but they can't make it, can they? So if you think about it today, if we sign 12 scholars now, and we've got, say, a left back who's 23 in the first team, well, he's going to have to hope that left back leaves within 3 years. So sometimes there's a blockage where you can't actually play. And also, let's be honest, if you think about how many people actually play the game, you know, there's only 220 players that play in the Premier League any given Saturday. Myself and John McDermott used to tell everybody about the 1,012 players that play in the 4 leagues. So that's only 1,012 players. So you have 220 players that play in the Premier League, and there's only a third of them that are English. So you're looking at between 40 and 60 players that from England that play in the Premier League every Saturday. So it's important, really, really important, that parents understand that it's easier to become a brain surgeon than it is to become a footballer.
It's a really good point. I just want to touch on that, Chris. That you mentioned there about, you know, people at 26 still calling you. The way I'd like to describe it is almost like chasing the dream. You know, still. I recently said I feel like I've spent 14, 15 years chasing the ball. You know, that's ultimately what I've done. I've chased that ball to Turkey. I've chased that ball to Scotland. I'm now in Wigan chasing the ball. Okay, I do it I've done it at a decent level and been paid well to do it. But there's a lot of players that do it even lower levels, and they don't have the finances, because there's definitely this perception that people earn millions and millions and millions, and that's certainly not the case, as you and I know. Like within the football, there's ranks, and as you go down the league, you're not going to earn that kind of money. So a big part of what we're trying to do behind the white lines is actually trying to give people more understanding of themselves as identity, and then give them the opportunity to go, okay, if you want to make it back into football, great, because I always believe that there's late developers. I believe that there's people that maybe one coach has said no, but another coach may like you. You know, that's the case with me. I was rejected by 4 teams before you said yes. So I always believe in that, but I also believe in the education. I believe that we can go into trades, into business. I definitely think if you've been in the academy system for 4, 5, 6 years, even 1 year maybe, you've got something. Mentally, you've got something, because it's dog eat dog, right? It's literally dog eat dog. You talk about the stats a lot. If you break the stats down to academy level, for you to get into Tottenham or QPR academy, you've had to beat the statistics, right? And that drive, I believe, can serve a lot of strength in other industries as well. So that's something that, you know, I'm sort of shouting from the rooftops, if you like. It's like, look, football's not the only way, and it's not sad for me to hear that there's people at 26 still calling you. It's not sad at all, because I get it. I really, really get it. But I just wish that there was also another way they could, you know, I hope that whoever that is calling has another idea as well of what they're doing, because it's not just the football, you know. You can chase it until you're dead, you know, and it'd be a sad way to live.
No, I totally agree with you on that. And I just think that the identification that you are a footballer, and then when you leave, listen, I'm institutionalized, so I'm going to struggle when I leave football, because I've only ever done that, and I've done it since I was 16. So I've known no other job apart from things I've done on the side outside football. So I'm dreading the day when I'm going to wake up and nobody wants me anymore, because I've gone from player to coach, and I've been doing it every day. So hence the reason why I'm still working tonight till 9 o'clock, because I'm obsessed. So I can understand it from now with the riches and that young players see, why they would keep chasing the dream.
That's a really good point. So we'll come to you in a second. I'm going to ask Naomi Cooper's question first, which is, her daughter's currently deciding whether to trial for a football education scholarship at 16, or stay at school to do A-levels and then trial at 18 years old. Any thoughts or advice, please? Thanking you in advance.
If she can get the best of both worlds, because sometimes if that's her passion, so she can get, she's in a great position. She can get the best of both worlds. If she can go for an education scholarship and play, then obviously, you know, I would imagine her daughter would probably think that way, because she's playing football every day. However, it really depends on what the subjects are and how in depth that she would have to learn it. But I think she's got the best of both worlds there, because even if she goes and does her A-levels and trials at 18, she will still be playing football. She won't be totally away from football and then doing that. So I think she can't lose on that one.
That's a good position to be in, right?
Yeah.
Simon, over to you. So if you unmute yourself and then ask away.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm 37. I'm still calling you Chris. Sorry.
Nothing wrong with that, mate. Nothing wrong with that.
No, but my question is actually about identity, because this is a theme that obviously you've spoken a lot about. And I was wondering, there's so many challenges with identity within the game, whether you're going into it, whether you're in it, and when you're going out of it, and many others. I'm wondering what, if anything, does identity have a benefit for? And if it doesn't, is there something that needs to be proactively done and could be done in your eyes to support people, footballers, people that ultimately play football with that particular challenge? What are your thoughts on that?
What do you mean, identity in what way?
So identity's formed over the journey, right? And we kind of accept that identity happens, like I'm a footballer, and invisibly it becomes how you understand yourself, and how you portray yourself, but also how you understand yourself to yourself. So I'm wondering, does that have any advantage in the game at all, or not? Are there situations where you go, actually, that has an advantage? Because if it doesn't, then there can be maybe even more attention to be paid to it. But if there is, then it can be managed. Does that make sense? It's a question. Yeah,
it does. I mean, I think it's a good question. I think my identity comes obviously with time as well. So you're in the game for, I don't know, 10 years. That's what you're doing every day. That's what you become.
Yeah.
What what the thing that needs to happen is, especially when you see people transitioning from playing to being out of the game, and not every player can be a coach, and not every player can be a manager. So most players go out of the game completely. So I think there needs to be something where we do manage people, or people have a, I wouldn't say a course, but they have somewhere to go, or where they are weaning themselves out of the game, so to speak. And that might be meandering into another profession. It might be staying in the game. But it's important that happens, because a lot of the times, if you're a player now who's, I don't know, say you're 34 and it's come to the end of your time, you've had an injury or you've decided you don't want to play, you know, May the 7th or May the 8th, whenever the last game is, it ends. Mm-hmm. You know, by the first week in June, you're on a massive come down. And then by mid-June, if you're not going to another club, you're on a massive come down. Listen, I know it because I've been that person. I've been that person in coaching and been that person in playing. And that come down, you don't realize that you're going through it until that loneliness, the banter that you miss, particularly from being a player, that camaraderie that you miss, the planning of being a coach that you miss, and the whole environment. So it has, identity has an advantage when you're in the midst of it, but it can be a massive weight on your shoulders when you're coming towards the end of your career, either in coaching or playing. I hope that answered what you're asking me.
I was just curious. I didn't know what I was going to get. So yeah, I'm really grateful. Thank you.
I do love the next question, actually, Chris, and to Steven as well. I'd be intrigued. So it's from Colin Austin. How much coaching can someone do from the touchline? We see managers getting animated and it's deemed as coaching. It's just got ... So let's just discuss.
Okay. Rambo. I was going to say, can I go first on this one? No, I'll go first. Very little. Let me tell you, from the sidelines, it's an interesting one. The managers I've worked with who are shouting, screaming information on, doesn't usually have much impact on us other than frustration, other than he's digging me out. I feel it only has a negative impact, in my opinion. You know, if you look at, I mean, I know obviously, Chris, not to look at your Pep Guardiolas and Artetas, but the reason why I said that is because they are literally the top of the tree. And if you look at them, yes, they're animated, but I don't see them too much shouting and screaming at the players. At half time, of course, there are tactical changes that can be made, and during the games. But this sort of, I think it's more old school to it. It's this sort of shouting and screaming at the players from the side. What does it really do? What is it? If I make a mistake on a pitch, believe me, I know. Like, I know I've made that mistake. I don't need the manager to shout and scream and tell me that I've made that mistake. I don't need it. And I think normally you have your captain on the pitch. You have 2 or 3 leaders anyway, in and amongst that. We sort of manage ourselves. So I just wanted to jump in and say that's been my experience. I've had a few swearing battles with managers back and forth. He's saying this to me, I'm saying that to. It's just heat of the moment. You know, I wouldn't dare swear at the manager off the pitch. It's heat of the moment. And I mean, the best managers I worked with have understood that, because you get it back from everyone, you give and take. But there's also been some managers who are actually expecting from the sidelines us to just go, okay, like we're robots. We're not robots. We're in the emotion of the game. We've got the crowd. You've got the refs. There's a lot going on. So that'd be me. But yeah, what about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think it depends on what arena you're in. If you're in the first team arena, I think it's very difficult because the crowd drown your messages. I think you can get small messages on. Obviously, when you're dealing with kids, they can hear you, so it's easier. But I think in the first team arena, it's very difficult to coach from the side. You might tell the nearest player to tell someone to do something, and that may get on the pitch. But I don't think you have a massive impact in first team football from the side, unless you're dealing with people that can actually hear. So if you're on the side and the fullback on the other side is not going to hear you on the other side of the pitch, or the wide player is not going to hear you.
Also, I'll just say to that, like, also depends on it if you're giving information that you've already worked on. See, that's a different. I think that's different. You know, if you've worked on a back five and on a back four, and then they say in the game, like, change it, you kind of know what you're doing already. But in terms of just coming up with random new information from the side, I feel like your only time is an injury break, you know, or a half time. You know what I mean? Yeah, in my experience, anyway.
Mate, I can't imagine you swearing at a manager.
No, that was the old me. I never swore at Chris.
You never swore at me.
I never swore. That's what I said. I never swore at Chris. Yeah, I never swore.
One question for you, Chris. What sort of coach are you?
Me?
Yeah.
It depends who I'm coaching, because I think everyone's different. I think you have to look at the players that you've got, and then who depends who you're coaching. And some players, some groups need a firmer hand than others. So I think I'm quite firm, especially in development, because I think you have to almost coax and cajole the players to get to their dream. So a lot of the times people like the coach who's nice all the time. So if you ask the players tonight, who's the favourite coach, they'll say the one who does the shooting, who says well done all the time. However, he's allowing them to fail. So there has to be a little bit of a balance. You have to treat people with respect, obviously. But I think you have to also be quite firm in what you're trying to get them to achieve for their dream. So it's pointless being the favourite coach that doesn't produce players. Because that's not what the players actually want. So I don't know you Steve. So there's times where I've probably had a go when you were coming through where I've shouted at you, but in a way that was constructive to help you succeed. So you're not just shouting at them from a personal point of view. You're not being individually abusive to that player, but you might have to be firm to make sure that they don't do the stuff that's going to make them fail, so to speak. So I think I've got a bit of both.
Yeah, I would second that.
Players probably wouldn't say that.
No, I would say
that question.
I'd second that. I'd say that the communication is very, very important, and I feel you as a coach offered both sides of that, which I feel definitely for me as a youngster I needed, because as you mentioned, there's no point you telling me all well done, but that's not how I'm going to get into the first team. Because when I was with you under 16, I wanted to know how to get a scholarship. When I got a scholarship, I wanted to know how to get a pro contract, and so on. So you helped deliver that message, sometimes softly, sometimes firmly, but there was a balance. Do you know what I mean? And I think like you have that, which is great, and it is why I believe you've been as successful as you have done in producing the amount of players you have. I think it's something at first team level that's probably lacking. It's definitely something that I want to see more of. Is I want to say emotional intelligence, communication. You know what I mean? Because you answered your first answer, I loved it, where you said it depends who you're coaching. That's such a good answer, because I feel first team level we very much try to treat everybody the same, and I'm a character that nowadays can take a bollocking. If the manager wants to go mad and get his frustration out, I can take that. But the young boy might not be able to take that. He needs to be spoken to in a different way. He needs to be told, well done. Look, at half, well done, keep going, you know, because that's what he needs at half time to get going. Maybe me, I could deal with the bollocking. And I think it's just understanding the players, who needs what at what moment, in order to produce results, you know, because ultimately, as we've spoken about, that's your job, especially at first team level, is to produce results. At your level, it's to produce players. Yes, it's good to be a nice person along the way, but obviously you're there for a purpose, you know.
I'm going to break the next question down into two questions. So it's coming in from Joe Matcham. What advice would you give to someone looking to become a technical director? Before you answer that, Chris, if you could just explain what your role as a technical director is, that would be amazing.
All right, so I've got a role that's probably quite unique to QPR, really. So Les is the sporting director, so he deals with everything in umbrella of the club as regards contracts with the players and helping to employ the manager. I'm actually a proper technical director, so I actually put the technical program into place for the whole club, apart from the first team. So you can't The new manager comes, then they're going to come in with their ideas. My job then is to quickly identify what that manager needs and try to coach the players closest to the team to meet the needs of the manager. So it's pointless in most of the academy. You're trying to play that technical game to give the players as many tools as possible so they can adapt. But when the players are, I don't know, 20, 21, and the manager plays a certain style, it's pointless. It's not my style. I've got to complement the manager. So I've got to make sure that the players that we produce can play for that manager. And the more tools that they have in their box will mean the more adaptable they are to the different managers that come in.
Perfect. So what advice would you then give to someone that perhaps wanted to become a technical director?
In my guys, I would say to them, first of all, I do it from a wide spectrum. So they need to have an understanding of pedagogy. That means how children learn and what they do, and andragogy as regards dealing with teaching adults to be able to teach children. So I don't need to be the best coach. What I need to do is to understand how adults learn and how adults teach children. So when I did my teaching degree, I had to learn how to teach children. So the people teaching me were adults. They had to know how I learn, and therefore how to teach the children. But if they didn't know how the children learn, they couldn't teach me how to teach children. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. The next one's coming from Cezanne. Hey, Cezanne. When are coaches or clubs that make decisions to release young players going to start giving constructive and helpful feedback? This surely should be implemented as a compulsory part of player aftercare now.
Can you just repeat that question, please?
Of course. When are coaches and clubs that make decisions to release young players going to start giving constructive and helpful feedback? This surely should be implemented as a compulsory part of player aftercare now.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think going back to what I was saying before, one of the things we tried to change here, when I came here, nobody wanted any confrontation with the players or the parents. So throughout the year, the player only received positive feedback. And then obviously you can't keep every player, and then they got released. And that became as a massive shock at the end of the season. So I think through the year, what we try to do here, which is probably over and above what the rules suggest. We have 6 week reviews for the players, so they have 6 week reviews all the way through. So they know what they're doing throughout the year, what they need to improve on, where we see them. So come the end of the year, if they get released or that they stay, they know exactly why, and they can contest it through the year. So if it's pointless saying to somebody, well, lots of times you hear what players, coaches say when they go into, if you're standing on the side, they'll tell you everything a player can't do, but you don't sign them for what they can't do. You sign them for what they can do. So it's important that when they leave, they're not worse at the thing that you signed them for. So it's important that when you have a philosophy and you look at a player who comes in as a dribbler, when he leaves, he can't be a worse dribbler than when he came in. However, there may be some things that could prop up his career that could be in addition to his strengths. So we just basically deal on a strength-based program, strength-based capability program. So what you're capable of and what your strengths are. And I think throughout the year, to give people constructive feedback, they need to be continually talking about those capabilities and those strengths. Now, if there is something that actually is going to make them fail, so for argument's sake, if you're centre half and you can't head it, then they need to focus on the thing, not focus, but need to discuss the thing that will not take them to the next level. So even when the players leave, they need to know probably why they've not succeeded at your club and what might help them to succeed at another club.
Chris, can I ask some? Sorry, Paul, you were going to say something. Yeah, I was just going to say it's really interesting listening to that answer. You see, I want to ask you, how do the youngsters take it? So if you're telling 17-year-old that he's in a first-year pro. Look, your heading. Let's use that as an example again. The heading. How are the boys reacting to that?
A lot of people. I always believe the first time you tell anybody anything, I think you always go in with sugar. Always go in with sugar on the first time that you tell them, because they might not know what they're not doing well. So, but a lot of boys, depending on their crowd that they hang about with, their agents. So now there's a lot of different factors how people take things. So a lot of the times, if you go in with sugar to start with, so they know that you're trying to help them, I think most of them tend to take it not too bad. The only times you have problems is when they think they're good at something and they're actually not very good at it. So they'll contest that. But at my age now, and how I would break something down to them, it would be in a way to make them believe that I want them to be very good at the thing that I'm pulling them up about. Sometimes I see a lot of the young coaches come in and they'll basically tell someone they're not good at it, or they'll have a go at them for not being good at something that they don't actually know how to correct. I think a lot of the times now, if we're dealing with the young pros, I think their ego is very difficult, because if you tell them in front of the crowd, they don't take it very well. However, however, I think people have more of an opinion now than they ever did. So they watch YouTube, they listen to their friends, and they want to please the crowd, their crowd of friends, more than they want to please you. So that's the evolving times now. And a lot of the things, when you talk about players taking things, so for argument's sake, when I first became a scholar, when I was an apprentice, in those days, my dad said, take the bins out, the bins are going out. Now I tell my son to take the bins out, and there's a debate. Why me? Why didn't you do it? So this is different. We have to understand that the times change, and how you disseminate information is appropriate to generation, whatever they are now, Z or whatever, I don't know, whatever they are, millennials, I don't know. But you have to understand that generation in order to communicate with them effectively.
One question I wanted to ask, following off what you were saying, like in terms of 6 weekly kind of reviews and catch-ups and talking about kind of strengths and their capabilities and stuff. If somebody then doesn't get taken on and kind of make it, could they request that information to help them then perhaps in another academy, or is there information that's shared between clubs so that other clubs know what perhaps they could work on with that player?
We give it to the player. We give it to the player's parents, so so they understand when they're reading it. So what tends to happen, I'm very prescriptive about what your job is and what you need to do. So most jobs are the same, but there's just a difference is your personality and the philosophy. So if your personality and your characteristics will mean how you carry out a job, and the philosophy will also do that. So what we do is we will make sure that the parents know how the players are getting on and what areas they need to work on, or what areas they're good at, and they can take that with them. They can take that with them.
That's important, right?
I think it's important if you don't succeed in something that you're trying to succeed at, you need to know how to do it. So it's pointless me just saying he can't do that or he can't do this. I always say to the coaches, all right, what are you going to do about it? It's simple. And if listen, you can try all you want. If it's not your time to be a professional footballer, you're not going to be one.
Yeah, I think you made the point before about kind of every single year these players are kind of coming on trial. They're trying to earn the right to kind of be a pro. Actually, if they don't make it, they are turning up every day. Actually, it's quite right that they walk away with that information and say, how could I be better? What could I learn from that time to then go and succeed? So at least they go there with that knowledge.
Yeah.
The next question is coming in from Jamie Kieran, and then we'll kind of come to you. So Jamie's asking, if possible, would love to hear what to what extent Chris thinks an agent could help, if at all, a player through the period of either receiving their first pro contract and trying to break into first team, or being released and having to find an alternative career.
All right, so I've been an agent. That's the worst job in the world, by the way, that I've had in football. And I've done it for a year when I got the sack from Luton. And no, I wouldn't ever want to do it again unless I had a big player. But what it is there's not many people with big players. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say scavengers, but there's a lot of agents, journeyman agents that go around trying to sign the players. One of the things is, I think, is detrimental to the players, is that they think because they've got an agent, they've got the God-given right to get a good contract and to become a pro. They put too much trust in agents as regards getting clubs, to get clubs and get trials. And a lot of agents, not all of them, so I'm not saying all of them, a lot of agents haven't really got a clue about what's required for a club with their type of player. So they have to look at the philosophy of the club and look at their player. What they do is they'll just try and get their player a trial regardless. So I think unscrupulously lately, there's been a lot of players after COVID where there's been an excess of players, a lot of players on the scrappy. Loads of agents have abandoned the players. So I had an agent the other day phone me about 2 players that I knew he tried for a year or whatever to get, and he's asking me what their chances are. So we're talking about their chances, and he's dropped the players because he knows he's not going to earn any money, when really this is the time that he should be earning money. So I would say agents are good when people get released, probably as a first-year pro, maybe. But I think that they are not so good when the players are young, at 15, 16, and all the player wants is a new pair of boots, and they start their mind starts wandering to the gifts that football can offer, rather than actually getting their foot through the door, and actually those gifts will come anyway.
That's such a good point about earning their money when actually it's really, really needed. Not kind of just at that point of kind of finding a new club, negotiating a contract. It's actually in that hour of need, that year of need. Don't just bugger off.
It's so important with the youngsters. That's so important for the young players, because so many young players get signed by agents who promise them the world, like you said, send them some boots to butter them up. The second they're no longer of any use to them, or they're released, the agents go missing. And I know that firsthand, because I have players come to me, or players' parents come to me and ask me, can I help them get a trial? Can I help them get in there? It's like, where's the agent gone in all of this? And then if you're doing well, then you don't need the agent. You don't need the agent, because you earn the next contract. They do have, I mean, we are talking about maybe, I don't know, 70 or 80%. We're not talking about all of them here, 100%. There are obviously, I was very lucky to work with Sil Regis, who was amazing. Do you know what I mean? And looked after me on and off the pitch whilst at the top. And when I fell, he was still there for me. So it's not all agents, absolutely not. But if you're asking for my experience, I would very much agree with Chris in the sense that when they are there to really earn their money, I think more of them need to step up and do that. And if they do that, then maybe in a year's time, we'd be having a different conversation. But based on past experience, I wouldn't vouch for it.
Kieran,
I'm totally agree.
the virtual floor is yours, my friend.
Hi, guys. My question for you, Chris, is sparked from a conversation myself and Steve had recently, actually. Do you believe there's a lot more room in football for support for footballers as people rather than as footballers? Because I think the conversation we had, Steve, was we're both 31-year-old males, we're both fathers, we're both involved at a club at the same time. We've both experienced a lot of the same things, but people would look at Steve and myself, having not made it, as totally different when we're not. And I think had there have been the support in the game at the time, both of us might not have experienced some of the things we experienced.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it started to come in the game. The thing is, the people like yourselves who have experienced certain things need to lead the way as regards the advice, because I think you've got a lot of therapists that come in and understand that there's a lot of money in football, and they offer advice and their expertise that doesn't actually equate to what actually happens in football. And people in football don't know who's good and who's not good. So I definitely believe that there is a door that should be open for that, but for the correct people, because I think there's so many people take a lot out of the game financially, because they have these so-called credentials to try and help people. And you know, one of the things you talk about dealing with players as people, I don't actually believe you can coach unless you can affect people. So our main thing is, you know, we talk about the four corners. Well, we changed it here. We have our four corners is an egg. So the white bit around the side is the social and psychological, and then a bit in the middle is the technical and physical. So without the social side, you can't coach people, you can't affect them. So it doesn't matter how good they are as footballers, and it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have as a coach. If you can't affect a player socially or psychologically, you will not be a good coach. Now, some coaches, old school coaches, do it on a short-term basis through fear, but that is all short-term. So long-term, you need to have a relationship with players. So I have loads of arguments with players because they know that we're not going to go outside and have a fight, and they know that they can talk to me, that they can talk to me back. So I will never argue or shout at somebody who I haven't got a relationship with, because they need to know I don't hate them, and I need to know that they don't hate me. So that family type psychology, where you're dealing with your little brother or your sister that you argue with, but you then obviously sitting around the table having dinner after, you need to create that when you're dealing with players. So dealing with somebody as a person, understanding what goes on in their lives, understanding, I wouldn't say what buttons to push, but understanding when they're not just ignoring you, they're having a bad day, is important. It's very, very important. I think it's actually more important than being a good coach or having a lot of knowledge. I think you're better off having less knowledge and more emotional intelligence to be a good coach.
That's something that you speak a lot about, Steven, isn't it? Is about the emotional intelligence and the importance of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've seen so many good tactical managers fail because they've lost the dressing room, because they just haven't had the emotional intelligence to talk to the players, to understand what's going on, to know what's needed at the right times. And they could be a great, amazing tactician, but if the players aren't feeling you, if the players don't want to work for you, just, you know, one player goes to two players, goes to three, and then that's it before you know it. I mean, that's why you see so many managers on a conveyor belt, because of that exact reason. They just can't quite connect with the players. So for me, it's. I mean, I want to be a coach and I want to learn from the likes of Chris and many others. And I'm like, that's the one thing that for me would be non-negotiable, is having that level of emotional intelligence to be able to communicate with the players.
The next question is coming in from Samir Vora. So quite simply, hi Steven, Chris. My son is currently with the under-15s QPR ADP and plays for Hayes and Yeading in the JPL. What advice would you give for him to stand out more, and what potential options does he have moving forward? I mean, it's a very broad question. So
what does he want, first and foremost? What does he want? Does he want to be put under the pressure of standing out more to go to the next level? He might just be enjoying the level he's playing at. Secondly, I don't know where he plays, what position he plays in, and obviously I wouldn't know what the philosophy is of the manager, so to speak. So if they're a team that plays through the pitch and he plays wide, I would tell him to work on his movements to receive, how he receives. And then when he receives, to stand out, he'd have to go one-on-one as many times as he can and try and get an end product. So it would depend on what his job is and what the philosophy is of the playing philosophy is of that coach.
Nice. Next one's coming in from Mike Nichols. Following on from what Steven said about coaches shouting on the sidelines, do you feel more needs to be done for coach/manager education around communication?
Me, do I think that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of courses that people do, and I think you do it on your badges. I think one of the things that I've done is probably educating myself outside football. And I think it's important that if you're a coach, you want to be rounded as much as you can. And I think just going on football courses doesn't give you enough education. So for argument's sake, I did a dissertation on self-efficacy, situation-specific confidence. And that was an aha moment for me when I first found out about it, about how we can all be doing the same thing, but some people do the same thing better than you in this way. So for argument's sake, we all play football. Steve is always going to be a better centre-half than me. I'm always going to be a better right-back than him. But in that situation, if we swapped it over, he would be uncomfortable in my position. I'd be uncomfortable in his position. So understanding how you can improve self-efficacy is very, very important for coaches to understand about players and what actually makes them become a better player from an emotional point of view as well as technical.
One thing on communication, actually, Chris, I was going to kind of mention to you earlier, is sometimes we spoke about attitude of coaches and stuff and shouting about kind of instructions and coaching. But what about the effect of younger players seeing managers and coaches absolutely going ballistic at kind of referees and kind of lamenting them and stuff like that? Do you think that that has an impact on their attitude on a pitch?
Yeah, young players, yeah, of course, because that's what you learn. You're learning that, aren't you? If you're an under 10, under 11, 13, 14, you're learning that. That's learned behaviour. You're learning to be disrespectful. So I definitely think that, you know, how people act on the side of the pitch is very important. So we have with us, the parents are not allowed to coach on the side of the pitch, and if they continually do it, then we have to say to them, your son won't play. And I think it's really, really important that the young players understand that respect towards officials and the other team is important.
Nice. I think we're going to have the last two more questions, Chris. Possibly even just one, but this is actually from Dan, and apologies if I don't get to everyone's question. What are the main qualities a coach or manager looks for in young players in the academy programs trying to break into the first team or make it as a pro?
So trying to break into the first team, I would say you have to quickly adapt to the person in front of you, because managers, like Steve alluded to, haven't got much time. The average, I think, championship manager one last season was 10 months. And I think the average lifespan of a coach is 1.1 year of a manager. So you really haven't got time to completely teach somebody what you're doing. So first of all, they got to come in with a certain skill level that can be molded. So the more adaptable you are, the more likely you're going to get into that first team. As far as people making it as a pro, I mean, Steve will probably vouch for it. We had a culture at Tottenham where everybody pushed everybody because everybody was desperate to learn, and everybody would do everything that they needed to do to become a top player. Because it's unprecedented how many players in a generation came through. That's because Steve would wake up and he wouldn't want Nabil Bentaleb to be better than him, and Nabil Bentaleb wouldn't want Ryan Mason to be better than him, but in a good way, you know. And Tom Carroll, you know, wouldn't want Harry Kane to be better than him, and Harry Kane wouldn't want. Do you understand? But in a good way. So people pushed themselves to their limits, and they actually were affronted if they weren't doing more. They were actually affronted. So that's why the level of excellence got, just pushed the boundaries more and more.
So it's the healthy competitiveness of the players that kind of really helped drive it.
Yeah, and it was, and we're not saying it wasn't hard to coach them, because you then have to become, are you worthy of coaching the players? John McDermott always used to say am I worthy of coaching Steven Caulker? And obviously I need to be better than him to make him better than him. You understand?
Yeah,
definitely. I'll just add to that, just to wrap up. It's interesting you ask what coaches look for in young players coming up with the first team, but I can also give it from a player's perspective, right? So what do we look for? Because you almost have to be accepted with the first team. If you want a chance to survive, as Chris mentioned, being adaptable, you want to be accepted by the first team squad. So I look at the young boys when they come up, and I try to go out my way to shake their hand, make them feel welcome, have a bit of banter with them. But there's still definitely a gap between the youngsters and the first team. It's still, they're sort of stood there shivering cold, like they're not allowed to wear the jumpers or the trousers and all that. They're almost apart from us. So what brings them closer is, for me, is their aggression, their work rate. Like, it's not necessarily the guy who takes on 10 people and puts in top corner. Great if you can do that, but I couldn't do that. That wasn't my ability. So what could I do to earn respect of the players? Be 100% in every single thing that I do, every tackle, every sprint, every header, be 100%, because that, and vocal, and that's what I add that as well, be vocal. And I know it's hard as a youngster, but adding that bit of like noise and presence about you is what I remember. So there's a lot of boys that come up and train with the first team Wigan. I remember 4 or 5 of their names. Why? Because they're the 4 or 5 who left an impression on me. Not because I said they put it in top corner, but because they had that work rate. So I think being accepted amongst the first team, I don't want it to sound wrong, but being accepted amongst the boys, if you understand me, then it helps you obviously feel confident, feel better, perform better, and then you go from there. The only way is up from there. So that would definitely be my take on it.
You're essentially earning their respect.
Earning the respect, I think the players, the squad, and then the manager as well. But I think it's be earned, and I think obviously as youngsters nowadays, maybe in my opinion, the ones I sort of come across, as Chris alluded to earlier, maybe believe it's more expected, whereas actually you still have to earn it. You still have to earn that right, to be able to play in the first team and stuff. It's a very, look at the statistics. It's so difficult in order to make it. So that would just be the bit that sort of stands out for me, is the guys who come up and give 100%, leave a mark on us, and I remember them, and the other boys remember them, and then they're almost one step closer to the first team. So that would be it.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to be kind of all we've got time for. There are kind of a few more questions that have come in, but we're not going to have time to ask them. But it has been incredible. There's been some great questions. Chris, kind of thanks for your insight. Just before I hand back over to Steven to kind of just close off and say kind of the final goodbye, as it were. Just keep an eye out on the socials again for Behind the White Lines. Everything that kind of is coming up will be put out on there. On the Eventbrite page, make sure you kind of give us a follow on there as well, because all of the events are going on there. We try to do these at least once a month. So do stay in touch, stay involved. And kind of be social with us across all of the social media platforms. But Steven, over to you, mate, just to finish.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul, for hosting. Thanks, everyone, for being here as well. And thanks, Chris. Amazing. So much insight. I said you've been a good friend to me, you've been a good coach to me as well. And I really appreciate your insight today, and as I'm sure everyone else did. So thank you. And good evening, everyone. Have a good evening.